Welcome, everyone. We are very, very happy to be with you today, doing our part to celebrate National Disability Employment Awareness Month and to highlight our newest partner, Best Buddies International. I'm Lisa Panarello. I'm the founder and CEO of Careers Advance and vice president of SMA New Jersey, a specialty chapter of SHRM, which is dedicated to staffing and recruitment. And I'm going to be your host. Now, just two minor things before we get started. Our program is being recorded, so you'll receive it in a week or so to reinforce what you learned, catch anything you missed, and to share it with your colleagues. Secondly, while we ask that you keep your mic muted during the presentation, we strongly encourage you to participate. So when our guest speakers reach out and ask you a question, unmute, get your camera off, and share. And then we have the Q&A portion at the end. Unmute yourself and share. Our goal is that you walk away with interesting ideas to apply to your recruiting and retaining fresh talent for your organization. So that said, I'm honored to kick us off here, Mike Vore. He's SMA's president and a client partner at Computer Task Group. Mike, can you kick things off for us?
Thanks, Lisa. Hey, everybody. Really excited to have you here for this presentation from Best Buddies of New Jersey. I was actually introduced to Matthew a few years ago and just really impressed me, all the great work that this organization is doing to help individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities and help companies really provide the support and guidance they need to develop opportunities for folks to kind of expand and diversify their workforce. So really excited to have you all here today and hear more about some of these new programs that Best Buddies has put out, and hope everybody enjoys it.
Yeah, great intro, Mike. I'm right there with you. When I met Best Buddies through you, when I first joined SMA, we were all getting very excited to start volunteering and be part of it, and then bam, COVID hit. So that kind of took us away from that, but we're very looking forward to getting back to that track. Well, that being said, let's introduce our guest speakers. Matthew Fernandez. He is the New Jersey State Director of Best Buddies International, the world's largest nonprofit organization dedicated to ending the social, physical, and economic isolation of the 200 million individuals with intellectual and development disabilities. He's going to share with us how recruiters can leverage a new benchmarking tool to build a truly inclusive workplace. We've been hearing that a lot, inclusive. Well, this is specific to a very willing and able talent pool. And we also have with us Victoria Geminani, a D&I talent acquisition consultant of Siemens Corporation, which is a global leader in intelligent power generation and distributed energy systems. She's also a Best Buddies employer partner. So we're going to hear about her experiences in working with Best Buddies and unique benefits of recruiting individuals with IDD. All right, Matthew, I'm going to put the mic in your hands now. So please give us great information. Want to know about Best Buddies, what it's all about, how it operates, and then how your inclusive workplace certification program works. Floor is yours.
Great. Thank you, Lisa, Mike, and everyone for having us here today. And I realize the headshot, I think I'm wearing the same blue shirt, so I do have more than one shirt, but it doesn't appear like that. But again, thank you so much for having us here. And like Lisa touched on a little bit there, you have probably heard a lot about diversity, equity, inclusion or inclusive workplaces. It's become quite the buzzword by now, especially during this month of National Disability Employer Awareness Month, or NADEM. A lot of organizations started realizing that there are vast pools of employees that they have not been tapping into for their work. There used to be the old, I guess, idea that individuals with disabilities can only do X amount of jobs. They can only do certain jobs, certain roles, and that was wrong. We've seen over the course of time that individuals with autism, with Down syndrome, with traumatic brain injury have been extremely productive members of society and been able to be assets to anybody who's looking to hire. Now also we're starting to see that there's a worker shortage, right? A lot of openings, a lot of places that are looking for candidates. My kids need school bus drivers. They're down to like 2 buses for the entire school district just because people are retiring out, but they keep going to the same pool of individuals to do certain roles. So it's about expanding where you're looking to fill the talent, and also doing the right thing at the same time, affording everyone the equal opportunities to work in the inclusive workplace. So I have a presentation. We're going to start off. I'm going to go back and forth a little bit with Victoria here, and please feel free. We will pause the presentation to ask some questions of you guys, where you are in your inclusive journey, and kind of see how we can help move the needle on that one. So I'm going to start sharing this. All right, so start out, what is Best Buddies? If you're not familiar with our organization, global nonprofit, started by the Kennedy Shriver family. So you might be familiar with Special Olympics or Eunice Shriver. These are the individuals that got together 30 plus years ago to start Best Buddies. Our mission breaks down to four main pillars: friendship, jobs, leadership development, and living. Living is an inclusive living program having opportunities for individuals with or without intellectual and developmental disabilities, or IDD, to live in same apartments, houses, everything across the country. Leadership development, self-advocacy, public speaking. We have individuals speaking at 1,000+ events. We have individuals who are performers performing in the Super Bowl halftime show for Best Buddies. So it covers a gambit. We have individuals who are part of Speakers Bureau, and again, self-advocating. So showing that individuals can tell their story and helping them with that. We have our friendship program, which is the one-to-one friendship matches. That is the bread and butter of our organization. That starts all the way from kindergarten, elementary school, all the way through college and adult life. Individuals with or without IDD get matched one-to-one to have amazing friendships. It's not a mentorship or anything like that. It is a one-to-one genuine friendship. High school, colleges, it's a club, but then once the individuals grow and graduate out, or they become adults, they get matched up in a program we call Citizens. We have corporate citizens chapters where adults in a company get matched with individuals with IDD in their community. And that's a big part of our friendship program. The one that we're going to dive deeper into today is our jobs program, or our supportive employment program. That started off in 1996 when we saw there was a need to move individuals with IDD out of sheltered workspaces in situations that they were just doing sub-minimum wage jobs, to realize their potential, to open the doors, give them opportunities in any job across the gambit. We have individuals who were hired in 1996 who are still employed by same employers this many years down the road. There was a lot of highlights. We have an individual who's a lab tech assistant at Pfizer, going on, I think, 10 years right now, making well over 6 figures as a lab assistant and lab tech at Pfizer, working in their lab. We have individuals who are in our program right now, especially even in New Jersey, who have double degrees in chemistry and physics and are starting to work at Johnson & Johnson, some of our pharmaceutical partners. Or we have individuals that want to do office work, want to be a receptionist, want to work frontline or work in office. So it's basically looking at what jobs are out there, because an individual with an IDD could do that job based on what they want to do. We started to see, as we were placing individuals in these amazing opportunities, that there was a need not only to prepare our participants, our individuals, with resume writing or interview prep. We started seeing that the employer partners and employers just needed just as much training and coaching to work with an individual with IDD than the individual did to work. We started running sensitivity trainings with companies, so they would feel that their employees would be comfortable working and not saying the wrong thing in front of somebody. We started working on how to do annual reviews with individuals with IDD and what modifications might need to be done to support that individual. Onboarding, HR paperwork, and all of that, we started working with employer partners to make them more accessible and more inclusive to individuals with IDD. So that's where then we fast forward to basically today, where we got to the point of we realized that there's a lot to do to work into that space, and we need to get out there more. So advantages of disability inclusion. Besides being the right thing to do and the good thing to do to be inclusive, it also makes good business sense. Here are some stats there for you, right? Employees with disabilities tend to have longer tenure, like I mentioned earlier, which then decreases turnover costs for organizations. I'll show you Best Buddies in New Jersey. We've been operating our jobs program for 4 years now, and we have a 96% retention rate of everyone who we've placed in the last 4 years. They stay in their companies. That just shows that individuals they fall in love with the company, they stay with them, and it decreases the turnover cost for the organization. 87% of customers reported they were likely to shop at businesses that employ people with disabilities. And every single day that number probably goes up because we're coming to an age of inclusive society. Individuals are using their buying power to shop at places that they align with on a social, political, everything type of way. And employing individuals with disabilities is one of those markers that goes across the board, whether your political interests are, that it's something that people like to shop and support organizations that support individuals with disabilities. Individuals are 2 times as likely to have higher shareholder returns of those of their peers without individuals with disability inclusion as companies. And employees with disabilities are innovative and connect organizations to serve and support a broader array of customer bases. There's a whole shopping pool there, right? There's a whole, if you can support individual disabilities in your workforce, that's a whole new pool of customers as well. Initiatives has shown, and again, that's the one thing I want to promote. It's not just hey, it's October, it's National Disability Employer Awareness Month. Let's put a cool badge up on our LinkedIn page and say we're inclusive, and then do nothing the rest of the year. It's all about having those initiatives that you launch whenever you launch it, and then you go from there and keep building on it. I always like to bring up when is the best time to plant a tree? 20 years ago. When's the next best time? Today. So that's something to look at when you're looking in the initiatives and as you're building up your organization's inclusive initiatives, is to start looking at the big picture, but then also start. Why diversify? Kind of touching, especially in this month, right? October is National Disability Employer Awareness Month. It enhances your public image. Raise your hand if you've seen on LinkedIn or Facebook, on any social media, anything, a company that has something about inclusive hiring this month, or anything in that space, right? You see this when people post about it, and then it sticks in the back of mind, and you remember this. It's the same thing that happens whenever you take an initiative and you launch something. It enhances your public image. So people, when you diversify, your public image will get enhanced then. Your diversity and inclusion plan, that'll strengthen it. If you say, I'm going to have a diversity and inclusion plan, and then don't diversify your staff or don't do anything to do that, it's just words on a piece of paper or words on a Word document, right? It strengthens it by actually putting real tangibles into your plan. Talent sourcing approach alone, especially talking to individuals in HR here, you broaden your talent pool, your sourcing ability will grow astronomically by working in this pool. Your company culture. We've placed individuals and we've seen companies really gel around the individual. We placed a young man at Merck a few years back. His name was Alex. The teamwork, the camaraderie that kind of aligned around him and worked with all of his employees, individuals without IDD. They started hanging out together. Alex went to Walt Disney last year and took someone from work, and they went together as friends. So It's great to see that the company culture will improve by diversifying individuals that are in it. Reflecting your community. Our community is a diverse community, not just New Jersey, but the world. But our community is diverse. There are individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities in our community, and predominantly in New Jersey. We have some of the highest rates of individuals who identify as being on the spectrum with autism than any other state in the country. I feel that's because we have fantastic programs and supports on it. So people come to New Jersey with intellectual and developmental disabilities because of the amazing programs that we have in this great state. So reflect your community and boost your corporate and social responsibility strategy. Again, it adds more into it when you diversify because you have more champions within your organization. Business benefits for employers. Again, the culture, more diverse, inclusive workplace, enhances employee morale. Cost-effective solution to address business needs and improve customer satisfaction results. We have testimonials galore about showing that having an individual, when you're greeted with someone with a smiley disposition, someone who wants to talk to you and actually listen to you when you walk into an office space, someone who might have IDD, it shows that customer satisfaction improves when you hire individuals with IDD. Reduces the recruitment and training cost. Again, this is the right thing, but it makes good business sense. The high turnover, low absenteeism. Individuals who, from our Best Buddies program, boast a 90% retention on when it comes to coming in and lower absenteeism. They're not out as much. They come in, they love their work, and they spend as much time as humanly possible working because that is a passion that drives them. Kind of looking a little into organizations who hire people with IDD. It goes everything from, there are federal and state contracting requirements. There are federal and state incentives, financial tax credits incentives to hire individuals with disabilities. But then you look at the top one, our organization's culture and good talent matches for open positions kind of goes directly back to the positive relationship to market performance. Then you also look at your diversity and inclusion strategy, your social responsibility strategy, and your measurable or observable business benefits are improved when you hire individual based on that business strategy level type work. So to dive a little deeper into that, I want to pass it off to an amazing individual, Victoria here, who can share some firsthand experiences of working with individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities.
Great. Thank you so much, Matthew. Hi, everyone. Really excited to talk about this topic today. And as Lisa had shared, I am part of an organization that is an employer partner of Best Buddies. I'm also on the Best Buddies Advisory Board as the jobs chair. And what's so important from that lens is always having that perspective of what employer partners need to know, what our biggest fears are, what our obstacles are, and really being able to have that dialogue with the broader Best Buddies New Jersey staff and board as we think about different initiatives and what we're prioritizing and how we talk about and educate individuals on disability. So for starters, I'd be remiss to not say inclusion is everyone's responsibility. So I'm sure many of my fellow HR professionals on the line find themselves consistently being asked, what are you doing about diversity, equity, and inclusion? And while that is an incredibly important and HR plays a role in what an organization does in that space, I also challenge my fellow peers in HR to go back to their business and say, what are you doing around diversity, equity, and inclusion? What are you doing to create a sense of belonging on your team? What are you doing to revisit your job descriptions and make sure there's inclusive language? Make sure that you're not targeting one specific candidate profile and you're being more open to the talent pool that you have access to for your open requisitions. And while the talent acquisition role has truly become more consultative versus transactional, the big push that we're looking to do as organizations in HR is really get our business to start thinking differently. And that's where that culture piece is so incredibly important when it comes to inclusion in your organization. When we think about bringing in talent, when we think about moving around talent, what is top of mind for them? What is going to be that experience under my leader? And that's where we take a step back as an HR function and think about, how do we train our people leaders? Do we have diversity, equity, and inclusion trainings embedded in that process? Do we even have people leader training? And then we start going down this rabbit hole as well from a cultural standpoint to say, do we have a robust accommodations process in place that's transparent to our employees? Do we have inclusive language in our communications, both internally and externally? When we think about our recruitment collateral, when we think about our social media pages, when we think about our career landing pages, are they representative of talent with disabilities? And when I talk about this, I don't mean solely individuals that are wheelchair users, though that representation is incredibly important, but I think about disability more broadly. Today, we're here talking about individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. There's individuals that leverage therapy animals. How are we being more intentional as organizations to be inclusive to people with disabilities? We're turning those words of inclusion into action, and that's why we're here today. And once you intentionally start putting a focus on that internal culture you have, that goes beyond what we do as an HR function. And once you start putting a focus on what your employer brand is, that's when it really feeds into creating a successful talent strategy. That is then when you have employees with disabilities raising their hands, wanting to be ambassadors for the organization, wanting to be able to talk about why your organization should be an employer of choice for people with disabilities. And that authenticity is what talent with disabilities look for. And that's the type of authenticity we need to be creating in our organizations. Next slide, please. Perfect. So, and you could press forward, Matthew. I know I'm putting you to work a little bit. Perfect. So, when it comes to disability recruitment, which is what I'm going to be focusing on this slide, what is proven to be most successful for me is taking a three-pronged approach. And that starts off with our suppliers. Any organization that looks to work on account with your company, it's really important to look at representation at that level, just as important as representation is in your interns and co-ops, as well as your full-time hires. So a best practice that we had gleaned from a disability in conference that my organization at the time had attended was to include an inclusion writer into all your supplier RFPs. This would stipulate that if a supplier wants to have an account with your organization, they would be required to take an intentional approach to hire individuals of different genders, races, sexual orientations, and abilities. And specifically during my tenure at Merck, we worked diligently to put a focus on people with disabilities through our suppliers. And I'll talk a little bit more about that when I share Merck's journey with Best Buddies. The second piece is indirect hiring. And this is your interns and your co-ops. So that talent that you invest in, they're with you for maybe 3 months to 6 months with the hopes of transitioning upon graduation. And what has become glaring to me, and I do not by any means want to make a generalization, but from my experience is there's been a bit of a disconnect between career services and student disability services. And what I found to be most successful in attracting collegiate talent with disabilities is to form relationships with student disability services. And how? By hosting information sessions, by proactively expressing interest in their students. And by doing so, you are creating that safe and inclusive space for students to come forward and express interest in your organization. It's that extra layer of intentionality where you are specifically seeking out these students and creating the space that they want to come to your organization to learn more, to take on an internship, whatever that next step might be. I also recommend looking at the different student organizations at the core schools you work with. So I know many organizations have a core school strategy that might be tiered based on where their intern or early career positions are geographically. So with that, really take the time to look at the different student organizations on campus. Many campuses might have a Best Buddies chapter or another organization that might be able to give you access to students with disabilities or students of any diverse representation. And what's really impactful is when you go on campus, it's very easy to assume that a student might see a flyer or get an email from career services. But by taking that step and looking up who their e-board president is or who their advisor is, reaching out and sharing that you'll be on site, that goes an extra way. That really shows them you want to build a relationship, and that really differentiates your employer brand. And then the last piece is direct hiring. This is your full-time employees. And I always talk to my peers in HR around the different partners that we leverage from a diversity, equity, and inclusion standpoint. What does your partner ecosystem look like? While intersectionality is a key approach to what we do from a talent strategy standpoint, and by no means do we want to put talent in boxes, but it is important when you look at your partner ecosystem to make sure that you have a partner that will identify talent with disabilities for your organization that you're working in tandem with. And that is perfect, as I now am going to pivot and share a little bit about what Merck's journey has looked like with Best Buddies starting in 2017. Perfect. So for starters, in 2017 is when Merck was introduced to Best Buddies. So through our
Victoria, excuse me, I think you went on mute.
I got muted, didn't I?
Yeah, I didn't know if you heard me or not. Yeah, so definitely want to hear
Perfect.
that part again. Thank you.
Thank you. No apologies, everybody. So for our Merck Best Buddies journey, it all started in 2017 when we attended their first gala. And what was really special around how this relationship unfolded was a scientist from Pfizer had actually introduced Best Buddies and shared how a Best Buddies chapter was starting in New Jersey to a scientist at Merck. And that is really how the conversation unfolded. So we attended the gala, and I'm sure many people have attended an event or some type of experience that you can't quite put into words, and you just need to encourage people to attend for themselves. And that was the experience for me. And that was the starting point of my personal journey with Best Buddies, but also my journey to help support bringing Best Buddies more broadly into Merck. If we fast forward to 2018, that is when we started incorporating our suppliers into the conversation with Best Buddies. We wanted to figure out what was the most effective way to initiate a partnership around employment. So before we jumped into talking about employment, they needed to experience what a Best Buddies gala was. They needed to have the opportunity to talk to different individuals involved with Best Buddies, whether they were a president of a collegiate chapter, part of the jobs board, whatever that might be. They needed to go there for themselves and experience that event. And then 2019 was truly a pivotal year for Merck with Best Buddies. So for starters, we were a sponsor of Best Buddies New Jersey's Friendship Walk. For those that aren't familiar with the Friendship Walk, shameless plug, I'm a co-chair, so I'm just going to put that one out there. This walk helps us be able to support and expand the programming that we're doing in New Jersey for students with disabilities all the way through adulthood. But it's also a really great opportunity to come together and celebrate friendship and inclusion in the state of New Jersey. We also participated in Best Buddies New Jersey inaugural internship program, which was a really great opportunity to bring in jobs participants in for a brief work experience with Merck. And then, of course, as we identified a fit, then transitioning them to a full-time opportunity, just like we would want to do with any intern. What was also incredible about this experience was, because this was pre-COVID, we were able to put on an onboarding breakfast where we were able to bring in members of our diversity team, our executive sponsor of our capability network, which was our Disability Employee Business Resource Group, and just colleagues that were really excited about having these Best Buddies job participants in the organization and wanting them to know that they have a support network around them to ensure they are successful and feel that sense of belonging in the organization. And then from there, we were actually able to hire our first jobs participant into our supplier JLL. And then that individual actually happened to have transitioned over to another supplier called Sodexo. And then lastly, we had the privilege of receiving the inaugural Employer Partner of the Year award at the Best Buddies Gala as well, really setting the tone of what opportunities employers have to engage Best Buddies. So come 2020, this is when we started moving into the pandemic, but that by no means meant that we were slowing down the momentum we built with Best Buddies and just disability in general. We engaged in the Friendship Walk again, even though it was virtual. We hired our second full-time jobs participant through our supplier Flick, which is our cafeteria staff. And then we participated in both Best Buddy New Jersey's summer and fall internship program. So really creating that environment of learning for our interns with the goal of transitioning them into roles based on their interest and where we deemed was the most impactful fit for them and their skill sets. And then finally, come 2021, shortly before I had transitioned over to Siemens, I was talking with some members of our employee business resource group, Merck Capability Network, around the Virtual Citizens chapter. And this was an opportunity for Merck to be able to mentor individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And we recognized the pandemic was overwhelming for everybody. So it was a really great opportunity that we didn't need to worry about locations, having to meet live. We were able to really be inclusive and grow this effort across all Merck sites to truly mentor these individuals and advocate for them around employment. And I think what was really great about this initiative, because I still stay in touch with some of my awesome Merck colleagues, is to know that the work that's being done with Best Buddies has gone so far beyond New Jersey and is also stretched across to the West Coast and other locations in terms of employment and other cultural and advocacy events. And what I'll say to employers that, you know, we're looking to embark on this journey is that's exactly what it is. It's a journey. It's not a destination. We will never be complacent with what we do around inclusion. And when you start questioning, am I doing this right? Where do we start? What opportunities do I have? I also recommend engaging your disability ERGs and EBRGs, because that lived experience is really going to help you make sure that you truly are being inclusive and not just assume that you are. And if those currently don't exist in your organization, that's another opportunity to engage Best Buddies to mobilize those support networks, because it's so incredibly important and vital to creating these robust strategies and creating that sense of inclusion and belonging for all in your organizations. And then next slide, please. And what I want to leave everyone with, and this is a quote that I have hanging up in my desk, but it says, we do not do inclusion for people with disabilities. Rather, it is incumbent upon us to figure out how all the things we do can be inclusive. You'll never hear me say disability inclusion. I say inclusion because you'll never truly reach inclusion without people with disabilities. So as you have these conversations in your organizations, continue driving that sentiment and make sure as you do any work that you are being inclusive for all. Thank you. And Matthew, I'll pass it back over to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Victoria. And I should learn by now to put her at the end because it's really tough to follow her in any presentation, but I'm going to try. So after working and seeing where we were as an organization and working with Merck predominantly, we saw that not all companies were like Merck. Not all companies were like Sodexo or Flick or JL, any of those contracts they work with. Not all companies are like Merv's Bakery in Bergen County, where we have an employer, or Paramus Borough Hall. Everyone is different when it comes to employers, and all of the employers are on different journeys. Like that nice little roadmap shows. It doesn't just start with, hey, day one, I shake your hand, you hire 2 individuals, you launch an internship program and a citizens program. It took several years to get to that place. So through working there and working with a lot of our teams here, we created the Best Buddies Certified Inclusive Workplace Program. What that is a program and a benchmarking tool that employers can use to build a more inclusive workplace. And again, it is benchmarking. So whether you're in very step 1 or you're at step 100, there's always another place to go because not everyone is no one is at that perfect inclusion mark where it comes to it. So we have this program. We have several companies that are involved, and like I said, large companies like, let's say, NRG Energy, but then small companies like Merv's Bakery. I use them as an example because it is one business owner and one employee who has IDD, and that is their whole team right now. And we're working with them to grow and keep working on being more inclusive. So to start, there's three parts. There's the needs, there's the strategy, and then there's implementation. So Lisa earlier said that you will have some opportunities to chat, and we're going to ask some questions. So at this point, I would love if all of the amazing individuals on this call would unmute. And what we're going to do is basically say what your needs are. So you can start by saying, hey, we are doing XYZ and we need to do ABC, or we are at XYZ, we have no clue where we need to go, or we need help. So who would like to be the brave individual to start us off?
I'll start us off, Matthew.
Way to go, Linda. Thank
Okay.
you.
Yes, so I recently retired from a pharmaceutical company in cancer in August of this year. So thank you. Personally, I have a nephew who is bipolar, so that's a mental illness. And my question, I'm pretty much on this call because my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that mental illness is not considered an intellectual or a developmental disability. Is that correct?
Yes, so the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation, where a lot of where the diagnosis and the classification of who receives what supports from the state and federal governments, classify mental health as not a intellectual or developmental disability. That being said, we have a high percentage of our participants who have multiple diagnoses. So they also have autism and XYZ. So I would definitely say individuals, as long as they have at least one underlying diagnosis of intellectual developmental disabilities, they can be serviced through various programs that work in this space.
Okay. And do you have do you operate in New York City, or are you across the country? What's your bandwidth?
So absolutely, Best Buddies is in 50 states, all 50 states and 56 countries across the globe. So our programs are in various stages, but New York City is a very, very robust program for sure. But yeah, we have programs all across the world.
Right. And so if I needed to know who that New York City person was, I would reach out to you, Matthew?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Other cool fact, if you go to bestbuddies.org/New Jersey, New York, whatever the state may be, that goes directly to their information. It is one giant nonprofit with offices in various locations.
Super.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No problem. And I will say, that being said, when it comes to the Certified Inclusive Workplace, my team, we are the individuals who are delivering this across the country. So if your company is based out of California, Texas, New York, whatever, and you want to work with it, we can start the process going here and not have to start there. Does anyone else have basically where their company or organization is currently when it comes to inclusive workplaces, inclusive programs, have an idea of what their needs are?
Matthew, my organization, to be honest with you, I don't know exactly what our strategy is. I know in terms of working with my group, definitely don't interface with anyone that seems to be part of the IDD population. Maybe it'd be helpful to get an understanding of, what would be the best way to kind of have this conversation with HR leadership in terms of, how can we get this started for our company?
Mike, you're good. Like, I should bring you on the road on these conversations, because that's a great segue comment right there. So absolutely. The great part about this, when we do this presentation, we say about the needs, it's always a big question mark, because not everyone knows what they need. They have to have a conversation, right? You have to have an understanding of what we are currently doing, where are we, what is our plan? And that's why we break it down to needs, strategy, implementation. Because if you try to do, you know what, we're going to implement an internship project right now, before you assess what your needs are, or before you think of a strategy, it won't be successful. So we have to start at the baseline at the needs assessment. And the needs assessment is part of the Certified Inclusive Workplace program. Is Best Buddies goes in, meets with you, with HR professionals, individuals within wherever you are in the journey. If it could be employee resource group, a company with a disability program there, work with it and kind of go through where we're at, what some of the needs are, and we share some best practices. We have companies that we worked with. I'll use a great example, Anheuser-Busch. We sat with them, we did a needs assessment with them, and they realized they didn't have any employee resource group for individuals with disabilities. So we worked with them to create an employee resource group, to create a mission statement on hiring practices, and to create work teams and to be able to work in that space. So we will connect and we can talk basically next steps on that, on organizationally speaking. The next slide I like to show is how it breaks down into 3 different parts. Self, team, company. So there's 3 different strategies there. You can say your own self, what am I going to do to be more inclusive? And it's might not be something that can change the course of your whole organization, one little thing you do, but at least it gets you started, right? So what can you do yourself to be more inclusive? Does that mean inviting somebody in to talk about inclusive workplaces? Does that mean attending a workshop like this? Does that mean signing up for a friendship walk? Does that mean, you know what, next time you see Joe who works in the cafeteria, who you know is an individual with autism, it might be, hey, say hi to Joe, ask him what his interests, ask him how he got this job. So that's the self thing. The team thing might be, hey, let's take our team out to an off-site. Again, off-site's a term when we were actually on-site for anything, but let's take our team someplace and do something. Let's do a volunteer event. Let's learn. And then what can our company do? So that's the other big part that you need to look at. You don't want to leave this presentation, leave this conversation, leave this saying, you know what, this is what my company's going to do. This is what my company's going to do. You have to look inward and say, this is what I'm going to do. And this is then, you know what I can share with my team and go from there. That is another big kind of way you need to review how we are assessing what our needs are, because then if you go to that last slide, what are my self needs? What are my self strategy? What is my self implementation? What is my, and a lot of different things we can absolutely talk through. So that brings us to this slide. So this is kind of like the little one page that we share with everyone about what is Best Buddies, what Best Buddies can do, what that might mean. Does that training on disability inclusion offer you and Best Buddy job seekers ongoing support? That's the other amazing thing about Best Buddies. I said we have an individual who's been working at 10 plus years at a company, still has a Best Buddies employment coach that checks in on him, still checks in with the supervisor, the manager of that company. Say, hey, how's everything going? How's everything going with Aaron today? What can we do to help the work experience? Continually, that's something that never fades away. And then Best Buddies will support your organization in becoming a Best Buddies International Certified Inclusive Workplace. And then you're going to be able to have a cool little badge you can put on your website, your emails, like the LEED certification, right, for the eco-friendly buildings. So that's something you can do, but also something that will then set you in motion to be a better organization with a deeper talent pool, a deeper understanding of what it means to be inclusive, and working towards a better self, team, and organization. And then on the bottom there are all the sources for all that information, so you can see that I wasn't just making things up when I said stuff, and that's where that is. So at this part, I would love to stop sharing. And Lisa, we can open up to more questions, information like that.
Absolutely, really amazing information. I don't know, my heart is just opening up as I'm hearing about this. You know, something you said earlier. I like going into companies and stores and seeing folks with IDD. And my local ShopRite have several folks that work there, and I'm gravitated towards them. They smile all the time. They all, can I help you? They're always working, and it makes me want to shop there more. So I just wanted to attest to that bit of information that you shared earlier. It's how I feel. And then I definitely want to open up to questions. I actually have one thought regarding Mike's question, then a question of my own. So Mike had asked about, what's a great way to start the conversation with HR? I'm wondering that slide, and I'd love to be able to get that from you later. The one that it said the reason why organizations hire people with IDD, that's looked like great information. I also like the fact that you put self, team, and company. So you can do what you can do. And if one of the things you want to do is help your company get more inclusive, maybe we can take that slide, go to my HR partner and say, listen, this is what I'm hearing. This is what I'm learning. Is this something that we want to think about? Then we can start that conversation. If we want to receive these benefits, because this is what we're hearing, that are the reasons to hire IDD, this is something that that could actually open up the door for the conversation. Would you agree?
Absolutely. And we have I'll be able to send out the one page has a couple of those slides are actually from a leave behind that we have that says kind of it's the information, contact information, all that stuff. So I can share that with you. And then in part of our process, if having that first conversation with HR, there's a presentation about, okay, here's some of the benchmarks, here's some stuff that you can strive for. Where do you fall on that, and where do we need to start working, and kind of going from there? Because no one company we've worked with is the same, no matter how big they are or how small they are. Everyone is unique, and which is fantastic.
Great. Yeah, I think those couple of slides will be helpful, and we'll share them with everyone here so they can use that as it's a starting point for the conversation. It's not just stats, but real support for the IDD talent. The other part of what I want to say is just a question, a little bit more about your certification program. Can you just kind of in a nutshell, a couple minutes, describe what that entails? So if an employer wants to get into using your tool, get that certification, is there a cost? What's the time frame, and who should be involved in bringing that certification to reality?
Absolutely. So yes, and again, it's all varied, based on what the needs are. It might be like, hey, we're doing everything great, we just want to start hiring some folks. Okay, we'll do that. But how we start with the whole process is our Best Buddies comes in and meets with you to do an assessment or a consultation, whatever the cool way to say it is. But basically, kind of meet and assess the needs, and then we create a roadmap, basically. It's basically, okay, where are we now? What do we want to do? We work with different companies on 1-year plans, 3-year plans, based on what you want to do and where we want to go. Ongoing through that whole process is reviews, assessments to make sure everything's going aligned. If the things you want to do a little bit more, a little bit less of, and we continue to work on that. Based on what the level of engagement and needs are, there are costs that are connected to it. But again, it's very varied based on the business needs, business ability, and where we have to work on different options. I think that touched on most everything that you were saying. And I will say, there are different stages of recognition for it. We're launching this project this year. So we have a couple of companies that are starting the process. And the idea then is every November at our big gala to award the individuals that have received certifications and received the individuals that kind of recognize them. That's when we have individuals who receive the Employer Partner of the Year. We have a Manager of the Year, a Supervisor of the Year, and we have Employee of the Year recognition as well. So it's a very focused HR and employer partner gala, get together and everything of individual kind of great networking, but also recognition of your achievements of that part. Also, any organization and company that are in the process of this certified inclusive workplace will get recognized, as well as they are taking the steps to move in that direction too.
That's a nice way to celebrate the rewards all the way around and really make it more visible, to bring it to attention to everyone, that here's what's going
Absolutely.
on, here's why it's working, here's how it's working.
I will say that was the one moment at the gala we had in 2019 was with an individual who was an employee with IDD, presented the award to his employer for the Employer Partner of the Year. I don't think there was a dry eye in the room when that happened, and it's a really powerful moment because it was genuine. It wasn't just well, we're giving it to this company because we want to raise a lot of money from them. No, we're giving it to that company because they have done some amazing work, kind of working with these individuals, and it's something that we really wanted to showcase and spotlight for them.
Great.
I had a follow-up question, Matthew, when we were talking about mental illness, and you said something about the division of New Jersey State, and I lost you. What was
Alphabet soup, right? When it comes to the state.
What was that? What was that?
Division of Vocational Rehabilitation, or DVR. That is the department that works with individuals who have IEPs, if they're in school with individual education plans, or getting supports or services from Social Security benefits for disabilities. That's the government arm that manages and facilitates all of that.
That's the New Jersey.
Yep.
That's the state. Okay. And my second question, because I'm a former HR person who interviewed a lot of people, how did you happen to get into this job?
A recruiter reached out to me, so thank you to any recruiters in this room here. But I was working previous to this at United Way in Newark, and a recruiter, they were opening this office 3+ years ago, and they wanted me to come in and open the office for them. So in that position, I got involved here, and it's something really close to my heart. My wife is a special education teacher, so always have individuals on the spectrum, individuals with IDD in our lives. So it's kind of great to be able to work in that space along with.
But you've been in nonprofit your whole career?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks for that question, Linda. So the rest of you're hearing about Best Buddies, their program. What questions are coming to your mind about what's going on in your company and how you can either start the conversation or move the needle on your inclusion for this great talent pool? Stephen, Nada, William, Travis, Anthony, throw it out there.
I actually, first of all, Matthew and Victoria, thank you very, very much. It's been a great opportunity to listen to the impact that you folks are making. So without prattling on too much about my background, I worked as a consultant on the talent acquisition side for different organizations and for individual clients in terms of, coaching and mentoring. And so my initial thought process at the beginning when, hearing about some of the larger overall needs in terms of HR departments, where it's like, on my own perspective, it's like, well, what do I do in terms of that particular area? But my thinking ends up going into, are there other avenues where folks that are in more of the independent professional space like myself are able to make a difference on a platform for you folks? Are there avenues that, that folks in the consultant space are able to wind up making an impactful change with you guys?
Absolutely. I will say on our kind of an example, we have an individual who's a recruiter on our board, and so that's kind of what her job does. And she's hosted interns and been able to have interns work, and even during the pandemic in a virtual space, she worked with individuals to give them work experience in that setting, because we do have individuals that want to get into HR and get into that space as well. So kind of giving those opportunities there, but then also spreading the word, kind of opening up opportunities for individuals. Maybe if you're working with a client or a company that wants to get it, kind of like what Merck did in the very beginning with working with their suppliers, right? And identifying their suppliers and say, okay, we need to hire individuals with IDD. So maybe working with some of your clients and saying, hey, what about some of these candidates for some of your positions, or individuals who are coaching looking to grow. I think no matter how big it is or how small it is, it makes an impact on one individual or 1,000 individuals. There's still that impact that is being made, no matter the scope.
Absolutely. Very much agreed. Thank you.
Great. Absolutely.
I'll go ahead, and I have a question, Matthew, and thank you everyone for putting this on. This is a really, really great topic. I'm not a business owner, but I am an insurance broker. My firm works exclusively with staffing agencies. And I'm part of the SMA, so I just wanted to kind of be involved in this just so I can hear some great information in case I'm approached by any clients, staffing firms specifically, that are asking about this topic. So that's really particularly why I'm here. I guess where my brain goes is more from identifying risk for my customers, which is what I do. I coach and mentor staffing firms about their exposure and their risk for insurance. Has there been any topic that comes up in this subject matter of like employment practices liability? If a candidate with IED is not selected for work, and then comes back and says, you didn't hire me, or makes an accusation of not hiring me because of my IED. Has that topic come up? Do you guys coach in that factor in that area?
Absolutely. I will say one of our larger employer partners is Kelly Service. It's not Kelly Service anymore, it's Kelly, right? Across the country, hire a lot of attempt to hire a lot of different individuals in that space. So we are very familiar in the staffing side of things. I will say for every opportunity, a big part of before we match up job A with person A, we actually work with the company, say, okay, let's walk through what your requirements are, what your needs are, what are some of the things. Like a lot of companies be able to lift 40 pounds. Well, what does that actually mean? Are you lifting weights at work? Like, what do you have to do that's carrying 40 pounds, right? So kind of assessing that. So maybe an individual who has a wheelchair can actually do that job, and it's really not required to lift 40 pounds on a daily basis. So we kind of work through the position description in a big way, and then only source candidates for those jobs that would align with those jobs. A big part of it is we are a nonprofit, but it's not a charity program. It is an employee and employer partnership, right? There are plenty of individuals that we have interview, and the employers say, you know what, this is not a great fit for us, and that's okay. We want to make sure the individuals have the experiences to say, just because you're working with us doesn't mean you're guaranteed any job and anything. You have to work for it. You will get rejected. You might even get fired at one point in your life, but how do we work with that? How do we deal with that, and how do we move forward from that? So I think that is a huge part of our conversations with our participants and with our employer partners. In my experiences, we never had any issues of that coming to fruition. But again, I can't say unequivocally that it's never happened or it never will happen, because of human nature. But we prepare everyone for those outcomes. And we've had to have, and not in New Jersey, but we've had to have individuals who get terminated from positions because they weren't performing, they weren't getting the job done. And it was a conversation that we were present with them to help them understand what was happening. Is you're being let go not because of your disability here, it's because you didn't show up to work for a month or something like that, and kind of have those conversations with them.
In other words, it's just as difficult for people without IDD. So mitigate the risk maybe a little bit up front by assessing the job description with the person with the right
Absolutely.
fit, and then having that very honest conversation about where the performance lies. Thank you for
Absolutely.
bringing that
Again,
up,
it's finding about those what the business needs are, and kind of aligning it, because we want employers to say, you know what, we're doing this because it'll help our business, not just because we want the tax write-off, or what. We want them actually to be able to benefit from hiring an individual from our programs.
Listen, I know we're coming on 1 o'clock, but I want to give it a chance. Any final questions that anyone wants to throw out here before we let our amazing guest speakers on with their day? I'll take that as you got all that you need, and you're going to go out there and spread the word of Best Buddies. Listen, before we go, I really do want to thank so much Matthew and Victoria for your time, your insights, and I will get with you to get some of those slides, because we can share that with our SMA group, and then obviously any one of your HR peers to move the needle on getting this conversation started with your HR folks at the office. So thank you very much for your time. Do remember that we'll have this recording to get out to you, which you can also share with your colleagues so they can listen to it and hear it on their own time. All right. And then before we go, I just want to have you mark your calendars. December 8th is our holiday networking time, right? We're going to have an end of year bonanza of sharing and celebrating with all that you do. And I would welcome both Victoria and Matthew to come to our event for that.
Sounds great.
And that said, listen, we thank you all for participating today, sharing your thoughts, your questions, your time. So let's keep the conversation going about inclusion. Follow SMA on Facebook and LinkedIn. Reach out to Victoria and Matthew to get more that you need about Best Buddies to get that program working for you. And encourage your colleagues to join the SMA chapter so we keep sharing and learning from each other and continue supporting your journey.